there's very few people that make it from start to finish without getting rolled in the training. Something happens where they fail a run, they fail a swim, they fail some other performance piece where it's like,
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
I trained for about 6 months before I joined the Navy, just like running, swimming, lifting, push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, all that stuff. And the last couple months before I joined the Navy, all I did was the PST test. So swimming, 500-meter swim, pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, run. And I did that twice a day for 2 months before I joined the Navy, because you do it in the Navy. And at the time I had signed a contract that if I hit all the numbers, I would get a $40,000 bonus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's a big deal.
That was some incentive too, but I fell short of that. But I mean, it was just a nice little bonus, but it didn't mean that I couldn't go to the training or whatever if I didn't hit those numbers. I passed, because if I didn't pass, I wouldn't be able to go. But that's what I was training for. And then you get to buds, and that PST goes out the window after you do it day one. It's you never see it again.
So boot camp did you have an easier time in boot camp because of the training you were doing? You were training, for something beyond.
Yeah. I mean, boot camp, the thing about the boot camp that I went through is every morning they had it was like a dive motivators piece. So all the guys that had contracts to go be SEALs or go to buds, they would wake up like 2 hours before everybody else, and we would march across the street to where the dive motivators building was, and we would do a PT with a team guy. And it was like one SEAL for the whole base, and he would put whoever the candidates were through like a 2-hour PT. So squats, lunges, swimming, running, all that stuff, whatever the workout was for the day. Then we marched back, and we would do the rest of the day with our boot camp class. And that's kind of how it was for 3 months. So it gave us extra training because, boot camp isn't just, push-ups and stuff like that. Like, you're learning how to fold your clothes. You're doing like, basic training stuff. You do pistol one day, you do like, there's a fire on the ship, and you got to put it out, and just different stuff like that. But this little dive motivator piece was a little bit extra training for the guys that were screening to go to buds.
So then the time comes, you get the call, you get the proverbial, hey, coming out to the mound.
Yeah.
And you show up in Coronado, California. What was that like?
It was awesome, man. It was so cool. Like, I mean, because back then I remember thinking, on that bus, going across the bridge, seeing Coronado, like, this is where it all starts. This is where the games begin. And I just remember thinking, like, I'm never leaving this place. Like, it's beautiful here. This is where the guys get the full benefit of this training. And I mean, I was stoked on it. And then we get there, and back then, this is 2007, early 2007. I mean, guys are just, when the instructors weren't around, we're just kind of hanging out in our barracks or in the pit, or, walking around, like, guys are just coking and joking and got their shirts off. They got pull-up bars outside so guys can train and work out and stuff. And it was like a college campus, back then. I mean, it's gotten a lot tighter, but back then I just remember thinking, like, this is sweet. This is just like, we're all here for one reason, and we'll see who's standing at the end.
Bunch of type A personalities on a high protein diet.
Straight up.
Yeah, that's
it was cool, man.
But you had to walk at some point past the proverbial bell.
I mean, it's funny. I didn't even look at the bell for like the first few weeks I was there. Like,
so it's there, it's there, but
yeah.
You refuse to make eye contact.
I refused to even look at it, And then I like snuck a peek, and I'm like, oh, there it is. And then I would start hearing it, ring off the hook, and I was like, oh yeah, there's that bell.
So they you go with Hell Week. Hell Week is what everybody talks about.
Right.
What people don't understand is there's so many different phases to Bud's class. But that Hell Week is what it is. It's hell. You get out there, and you're starting. The anticipation had to be killing you.
So let's rewind a little bit here. Hell Week is in the 4th week of first phase, right? So before first phase, you've got like 3 weeks of indoc, and indoc it's a very light touch compared to first phase. Like you do a little bit of PT, you do, you run, you do your tests, you do a little bit of log PT, and it's just enough to where guys are like, okay, I see what this is, but it's not the full hammer. It's not the full swing, right? So when first phase starts, those first 3 weeks are, I would say, harder than Hell Week because you're getting just crushed for from sun up till sundown, before the sun comes up till after the sun goes down. And I would say that those 3 weeks were harder than Hell Week because Hell Week, like it sucks. And, going into it, you do have those butterflies. And you're like, oh man, like what are we about to get ourselves into here?
It's built up so big.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I remember that's all I thought about going into buds was Hell Week. I didn't even think about the first 3 weeks. I knew they would suck, but I didn't think they'd suck that bad. And it was pretty intense, man. Like you're doing, because not only are you getting crushed every day, like you're doing sprints and long runs until guys are falling out and throwing up and quitting, and you're doing log PT, you got boats on your heads, you're wet, sandy, freezing.
Yeah, because the Pacific Ocean is not as warm as everybody thinks.
Yeah, everybody's like, oh, let's go take a dip. And, they joke, the instructors, they joke too, be like, kids are playing in here all the time. What are you crying about? But I mean, you're in there for an hour and you're jackhammering, when you get out and you can't walk straight. I mean, and then you have to go perform. You have to go do your run and you have to pass it. You have to do your swim, you have to pass it, and you have to do the O course and you have to pass it.
So I watched 234 and I watched people jackhammer. Right, and I know what jackhammering is. Yeah. So right before COVID hit, right at the beginning of lockdown, all the gyms shut down. I was training for a triathlon. Yeah. So we're talking like March. And so at that time, we didn't know how long. We knew I was going to do the Lake Placid Ironman.
All right.
And I had to swim. Well, I don't have a pool, so there's lakes in town. I buy a wetsuit. Like I prepare. Like
right.
Nothing's going to stop me. Winners always find a way. Losers always find excuses. That's the way my mind works.
Right.
So I go into a lake and I got a temperature gun, and I'm like, it's 45, 50 degrees. I'm like, all right, we'll deal with this. I get in there in my wetsuit and I do like a 5-mile swim, and I get out, and I'm like, I literally cannot control my hands from doing this.
Yeah.
And mind you, the person's house who were friends of mine had a fire going when I got done, and I'm sitting next to the fire, and I cannot for the life of me, my hands stop. And it's the first time I really experienced uncontrollable jackhammer.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And you guys deal with it consistently.
We had, it was called wetsuit appreciation, and it's like the first week, maybe the first or second day, and you're just in the water, and they call it wetsuit appreciation because they're like, all right, we're not going to let you wear your wetsuits, and you're just going to go out there, with your mask and your UDT vest on, and you're just going to get in a swimmer circle, and you're just going to tread water, and you're just going to feel what it's like to not have a wetsuit. And then pretty much all of Buds is wetsuit appreciation because, unless you're doing a swim, like a dive, you're not wearing a wetsuit. I mean, 2-mile ocean swims, we wore wetsuits, and then our dives in second phase, we wore wetsuits. But I mean, other than that, man, you're slick, and a lot of times you're in your skivvies, and they'll put you in the water with your shirt and your pants and your boots on, and then they'll pull you out and you strip down and they put you back in, and then it's like, then you got to find your gear, and everybody's just falling all over each other.
People don't understand what a wetsuit is. A lot of people who aren't in the know. A wetsuit is just going to give you more time. Yeah. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Like if you go into that water without a wetsuit, maybe you'll last a half an hour.
Right.
All right. If you have a wetsuit on, you'll be able to last an hour. So it's still cold as shit.
Oh, yeah.
But it allows you, because it keeps all the water around your body. And people don't understand that. I sure do now.
Yeah.
I sure do now. But the consistency of the torture of that suffering that you went through is remarkable, even in the first 3 weeks. And then everything lights off with a bang.
Yeah. The way my career went, like most people who go through Buds, there's very few people that make it from start to finish without getting rolled in the training. You know, something happens where they fail a run, they fail a swim, they fail some other performance piece where it's like,
Stress fractures, pneumonia,
yeah,
all that
there's
stuff.
there so they count on that, and they count on guys that are going to end up being SEALs getting rolled at some point. Um, like I think our class started out with like 250, 300 guys, and I think there were maybe like 7 originals that went on and got pinned. You know, that class probably had about 39 or 40 people graduate, but only 7 of them never got rolled. You know,
That's a very low statistic.
yeah, it's extremely low. I only know like 1 or 2 guys actually that made it from start to finish with no rolls. So my first class was class 264, and I got to Hell Week, and I got rolled on the Friday before Hell Week. So I didn't even make it to Hell Week in my first class. And because I failed for my swims. My swim times were no good. And I had to go before a board with a bunch of other people that had failed swims, runs, whatever. And right before Hell Week, they put us before this board. They go down your list of charges of what you suck at. And they're like, okay, the board recommends roll, roll, roll. And for the most part, everybody got a roll. You don't get dropped unless you're a complete turd. Um, but back then, you only got 1 performance roll and 1 medical roll. And then after that, no more chances. So I got to Friday of the third week of first phase and got rolled back to the beginning. And I had to do first phase all over again. And
So you actually had to go 6 weeks before you even get to Hell Week.
right,
Oh.
not including the 3 weeks of indoc before that. So
Well,
yeah.
was there any thought in your mind this ain't looking good?
I know that I was bummed that I gave up my performance role so quick, because like there was never a thought of quitting, but I needed that performance role because there's a lot more training after Hell Week and a lot more things that you can fail. And I knew that giving up that silver bullet early was not good for me. But it was at this point, like I knew what to expect from the first 3 weeks. So I just kind of I had to pony up, you know, there's no getting around it. There's no like shortcuts. There's no skating. So I just had to, you know, suck it up and do it again. And at this point, I was passing my swims. So it's that you have to be passing everything in order to get the opportunity to go to Hell Week. You know, it's a gift.
It's a
for you.
privilege,
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
privilege for you to be able to go through the gates of hell. And so I got rolled to class 265, and I got that privilege. And I remember thinking like that Sunday, I was like, all right, like this is it. Like this is where we, you know, just put our head down and just crash through as hard as we can. And it was legit, man. Like that. I remember it was a weekend. I forget what
They tell you when it's starting,
well
or they do it by surprise.
It starts out with crash grenades and machine gun fire. That's how you know it's starting. And it usually happens at night. Like so you're all day Sunday, you're just kind of hanging out, you're stretching, you're, you know, getting ready for, you know, you have the chaplain come in and he talks to you. He's like, you guys can do this. You know, we put on like Gladiator and, you know, Braveheart or whatever movies, you know, just to kind of get hyped up. But I remember the next day was like a holiday, and that Monday was a holiday. I forget which holiday it was, but the gunshots and the crash bangs went off while the sun was still out. And I remember thinking like, this is a mistake. Like these guys, they're mistaken here. Like this isn't supposed to start until it's dark. But apparently what I found out later was the CEO of the base, he wanted to cut out because the next day was a holiday. He's like, let's get this show on the road so I can get out of here. And so, yeah, we kicked it off early. I think it was like maybe like 6 o'clock because the sun was still out, and it was just like chaos, you know? And that first 36 hours is so intense, man. And like,
It's got to fuck with your mind.
oh yeah.
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 Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
Like that literally is the point. To fuck with your mind.
Totally. You got instructors on bullhorns yelling at you. Guys are running all over the place. And then, they try to corral you up and they're like, all right, let's get a head count. Because the most important thing is making sure you have all your guys. And guys are quitting left and right. So, they look to the leadership of the class to be like, hey, what's your head count? And if they don't have the right head count, then everybody's getting beat, especially the leaders, and then leaders are quitting. And so new guys or new leaders are stepping up in their place. It's chaos. And then, you're getting surf tortured and you're doing lunges with a log for 2 hours. Like I remember standing in place, digging a trench from doing lunges in place for an hour. And I remember like all this sand kicking up and it was so like my mouth was so dry. Like all I wanted was some water, and because I just I couldn't swallow. I was like, my tongue was like paste. I'm just like, this is terrible. But you just keep going because it's like, what are you gonna do? Quit? Which guys they do quit. But
So how many did you lose? So the first week.
so our class started out with about 250 guys. When we got to Hell Week, we had 80 guys.
Wow.
So in 3 weeks, whatever that math turns out to be, we went from 250 to 80, and then we secured Hell Week with 39.
Oh.
So half of that left.
I'm assuming this is all by design. The Navy
Oh, yeah.
designs this way.
Oh yeah.
They know the percentages going in, and there's a very special person. So by the time Hell Week comes around, like, all right, now we got to ramp it up because these guys are tough. They got some grit. So let's ramp it up a little bit. And then thankfully you're in the middle of Hell Week now.
Yeah, man. So those Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then half of Wednesday, that's where you get the most quitters. It's Sunday, Monday, and into Tuesdays where you get the most, and then maybe onesie, twosie after that. And then by Wednesday, nobody's really quitting. You may get a couple people get rolled for injuries or whatever, but nobody's quitting after Wednesday. But that first 48 hours, man, it is.
What's the part that sucked the most for you?
In Hell Week?
Yeah.
I mean, running with a boat on your head. So I went through 2 Hell Weeks. That first Hell Week was the boats on the heads because we ran from the compound in Coronado down to Imperial Beach, which is about 9 miles, and it was a sprint, a dead sprint with this rubber boat bouncing on your head. It's you and 5, maybe 6 other guys running with this boat, and you got instructors behind you pushing the boat, making you race. And if you don't catch up to this next boat crew, you're going to get beat, and they'll drop the boat, and then you get wet, and then you pick the boat back up, and you keep running, and you got to go catch up to them, and it's like, and you have what do they call them? Like Indian races. So you're all on a line, and then the boat in the back has to sprint to the front.
Oh yeah. I know what those. Yeah, I know that one.
So that to me was probably, that was the most painful because when you're sprinting with this boat, it's just like slamming on your head. It's like whack-a-mole. You're just getting pounded on the head, and that sucked.
And then without the sleep, I know you get they give you like an hour, but it's not real.
Yeah, you get an hour on Wednesday and then an hour or 2 on Thursday.
Your mind is not functioning at 100%.
You're an autopilot.
Yeah.
You're just like a zombie. You just kind of, at that point, you're just doing what you're told. Like you're just following the noise and the instruction. Like you're not fighting back. You're just going with it.
And there's really no, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Because if I'm wrong, it's out of ignorance. There's no, in Hell Week, there's no testing. Like you don't have to make times for the runs or anything. It's more about enduring.
Yeah. They do have tests, where it's like, hey, you've got to do this evolution in this amount of time or else kind of thing. But it's not like a graded thing that goes, in your record.
Yeah.
It's all just about, saving your ass from more torture,
So you make it to the end, and what kind of shape you in?
I'm beat to shit.
Yeah.
Everybody's beat to shit. Some worse than others. Like for me, I was just my knees and my ankles were swollen, and like I had a little bit of chafing, maybe on my neck and on my head from the boat. But there were some guys like the inside of their thighs looked like hamburger meat,
Oh,
just from like the sand just getting in between your tri shorts and your leg, and it's just you're just grinding, and it's just ripping you up, and it's like I mean that
you're
shit burns,
you're human sandpaper.
Yeah,
That's
and
what you
it's
are.
like and it burns. I was so thankful to never get that because I mean these guys were raw. I mean just raw to the bloody meat, and but for me it was just my knees and my feet. Um,
And
I
you
was
got
just
boots on the whole time.
yeah
Yeah. So the
yeah
sand, if you get sand in your boot, then
oh
all of a
yeah
sudden you got sandpaper in your boots.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah. I mean my feet were like soggy. I had like trench foot,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, and then the following week is called walk week, and they let you wear shoes, and you're not, and instead of running to every evolution, you're walking. That's why they call it walk week, because in buds those first 3 weeks, and then after walk week, the rest of buds, you're running everywhere. You're running to chow, you're running to evolutions, you're running to whatever the schedule calls for that day. And you start out running in a group, like in formation, four abreast and however far back. It's funny because in the beginning of training, you got this like barbarian horde of like 250 people, running everywhere. And then after Hell Week, there's like, 30 or 40 of you. So you get there, get there a little quicker and a little quieter. But
So you make it through this really difficult situation, this hell week, and you think you got it. And then you get rolled again. And that's going to do it for part one of The Suffering of a Frogman with John Collins. There's just way too much information to put into one episode, so we're going to break it up into two because the second part is really going to blow you away, and it's coming up right now.